Honors, case number IT 0484-T, the prosecutor versus Ramush Haradinaj, Idris Balai, and Lahi Ibrahimaj.
Thank you so much. Could we have appearances for the day, please, starting with the prosecution?
Yes, good afternoon, Your Honours. Paul Rogers appearing for the prosecution together with my team, Priya Gopalan, Ms. Daniela Kravitz, Ms. Barbara Goy and Mr. Adichie Menon, and our case manager today, Mr. Colin Narrott.
Thank you very much. And for the defence, starting with Haradinaj.
Your Honour, Ben Emerson on behalf of Mr. Haradinaj, together with my learned friends, Mr. Rod Dixon and Rosanna O'Reilly and Mr. Andrew Strong.
Thank you so much. And for Mr. Balai.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Gorgai Smith appearing on behalf of Mr. Balai with Ms. Colin Rohan and Mr. Chad Mayer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. And for Mr. Ibrahimaj.
Good afternoon, Your Honours. Richard Harvey appearing for Mr. Ibrahimaj together with Mr. Paul Troop, Ms. Sophie Rigney and Mr. Luke Bonish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harvey. Mr. Rogers.
First of all, you should have a bundle of documents which we have produced, which are copies of the slides and that we will be showing during the course of the opening this afternoon. Sometimes it's easier to see them in the hard copy than on the small screens, because I know that there is variable quality sometimes on the screen itself. And so that's why we have produced them. I hope to be of some assistance to the court.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers.
Your Honour, the crimes alleged in this partial retrial cover a short time frame, between about the 19th of May 1998 and approximately the end of July 1998. The crimes for which these accused are to be held criminally responsible in this trial were, the prosecution says, all perpetrated in the KLA prison at Jablanica in the municipality of Jakova, Western Kosovo. Your Honours, the counts allege murder, torture and cruel treatment as crimes against the laws and customs of war. They were all committed pursuant to a joint criminal enterprise involving the three accused, Ramush Haradinaj, Idris Balai and Lahi Ibrahimaj, in which we say collaborators, spies and those suspected of treachery or opposition to the KLA were targeted. The victims were beaten, tortured and in some cases murdered, regardless of their ethnicity, be they Serb, Roma, Egyptian Ashkali or Kosovo Albanian, whether they were Christian or Muslim. And in relation to counts 1 and count 6, involved, say the prosecution, the direct participation of all three accused. The crimes charged in this indictment occurred in the context of an armed conflict which existed from and including the 22nd of April 1998 throughout Kosovo between Serbian armed forces and the Kosovo Liberation Army, of which all three accused were leaders. The Kosovo Liberation Army was fighting what it considered was a war of liberation, as its name implies. The accused pursued that aim and in so doing sought to control, to the exclusion of enemy forces, the area defined in the indictment as the Dukagene operational zone, forming part of the municipalities of Dečani or Dečan, Peć, Peja, Jakovica, Jakova and Klina. And Your Honours, I will adopt, simply for ease of reference, the Albanian version of the town's names to avoid having to repeat them all the time. And Your Honours, they did this by suppressing real or perceived opposition. While they were fighting a war and thus using legitimate force, they also pursued illegal means to achieve their aim. They mistreated civilians who were or were perceived to be opposing the KLA. This case is about the implementation of the common purpose in the village of Jablanica in the Jakova municipality. Your Honours, I'd first like to orientate the Chamber, if I may, as to some of the geography in the area, the subject of the indictment. Your Honours, showing on your screen now is a slide of the whole of Kosovo. And Your Honours can see that it shows all the municipalities, and it also shows the national boundaries. Your Honours, I hope it's on your screen. I'm grateful. It also shows the national boundaries. Your Honours can see, starting in on the right-hand side of the page, Serbia, and then going down south to Macedonia, across to the west to Albania, and north then into Montenegro. And Your Honours can see to the west of Kosovo, on the borders with Montenegro and Albania, starting in the north, the municipality of Peć. You can see the town of Peć really forming the centre of that municipality slide. Moving south into Dečani, and the town of Dečani marked just in pink, and moving further south from there to Jakova, and the town Jakova marked at the bottom, in the centre rather, of that municipality. And then if we travel north from Jakova, you'll find the municipality of Klina. And what is not shown on this particular slide is there is a road, and I'll show you the next slide in a moment, there is a road which joins Jakova and Klina. Your Honours, the area of Kosovo is about a quarter of the size of the Netherlands, and with a population of approximately 2 million. And Your Honours can see from this municipality map that the area that we are concerned with is within about a quarter of the size of Kosovo itself. So we say it's a relatively small area that we're dealing with. Can I show you now the next map? Your Honour, this is a map that the prosecution have put together to try to identify, or at least highlight, the main towns and villages that you'll be hearing about. One of the problems with the more detailed topographical maps is they're very crowded with lots of contour lines, and it's hard to see sometimes where everything is. But just to orientate you around this map, if I may, starting on the left-hand side of the map to the top left-hand corner, you'll see the town of Peć. And then if we travel along the red road, and these are the main roads, we say, that are linking the main towns, we travel along the main road to the east. Imagine yourselves driving along through Zahac, down to Zaimovo, which is marked on by the rivers, at the junction of the rivers, and then just a little north to Klina. And then there's the village of Dolac, and then we get back in the car and drive south, passing Dolovo, carrying on the road, passing the Lake Radonic, and then arriving in Jakova. Pausing briefly in Jakova to point the car back towards Peć and drive up to Dečani. And on the way to Dečan, on the right, you'll see the village of Glojan. And that is the village in which Mr. Haradinaj has his family home, and which forms one of the headquarters, we say, of the KLA in this case. Not to be confused with another Glojan, which is a Catholic village of Glojan, and I'll identify where that is very shortly. Your Honours, very broadly we say that within the Red Road area, the KLA had, through the indictment period, substantial control of that area. Outside the Red Road area and along them represented areas of conflict with Serb forces. Now, Your Honour, that's not to say that there was no conflict within the areas bounded by the roads, particularly in the west, around Mr. Haradinaj's villages, and in the Lake Radonic area. But the prosecution says that the KLA had a broad measure of control in that central area. Your Honours, can I take you back to the village of Zaimovo, just south of Klina, back on the road there, and you'll see just to the west of Zaimovo, on the other side of the river, a village called Grabanica. And Your Honours will hear a reasonable amount of evidence about the events in Grabanica. Travelling southwest from Grabanica, we come to Catholic Glojan. And south of Catholic Glojan is Jablanica, which will form really the main centrepiece for the evidence that you'll be hearing during this case. And then southwest of Jablanica is the village of Jabal, which you will also hear something about. And take the map off. Your Honours, can I deal now a little with what the prosecution says is the evidence relating to the development of the KLA in this area, the road-bounded area, which broadly we call the Dukagene area. Your Honours, I will then, after I've dealt with that, turn to the development, first deal with the geographical control, forgive me, and then I will turn to the development of the organisation of the KLA within the Dukagene area and address the consolidation of what we say is Ramush Haradinaj's control of the KLA within that area. Dealing first, if I may, with geographical control. Your Honours, the first two KLA headquarters established in the Dukagene were firstly in Jablanica, in the Jakova municipality, the oldest headquarters in western Kosovo, and under the control of Lahi Brahimaj, also known as Maxhuf or Gypsy. And he was Ramush, and is Ramush Haradinaj's maternal uncle. And secondly, in the village of Glojan in Dechan, under the control of Mr. Haradinaj, also known as Smile. Your Honours, in 1998, Colonel John Crosland was the British military attaché to the embassy in Belgrade. He produced a map in the last trial to show the area known as the Dukagene between March and May 1998. Your Honours, if I can show you please that map that he produced in the trial. He described the black line, which overlaps in part of the blue, as showing the boundary of this area, and said that throughout Kosovo there were several groupings of the KLA, and in particular in this area of the Dukagene. He marked the blue line to show the Peja to Dechani road as a place where he described were shoot and scoot tactics, that's the phrase that he used, employed by the KLA against Serbian forces in the early part of the conflict. The road, he described, had become a thin red line, or a front line for Serbian forces, who were trying to prevent the flow of men and materials from Albania, where the Kosovo Liberation Army was arming itself, into Kosovo itself. And Your Honours will recall from the first map that I showed you how close to the borders of Albania and indeed Montenegro these municipalities are. Serb forces, he said, had been unable to hold the mountainous area along the Albanian border and had fallen back effectively along this road. And he described many battles being fought along and around the road. And Your Honours will note from this map that the village of Glojan, Ramush Haradinaj's village, and the headquarters is within the cluster of circles immediately to the right of the bottom half of the blue line. In fact, you can see two rather poorly formed blue circles, and just to the right of those rather poorly formed blue circles is a circle, and in there is the village of Glojan. On a larger scale map, it's clearer to see, but I think Your Honours have the general picture. Your Honours will find all these maps in your bundle, and in the bundle it's at page 3. Your Honours, as the KLA grew during 1998, it began to establish control of parts of the territory of Kosovo. And in relation to this indictment, by April to May 1998, the KLA in the Dukagene area had established what we describe and others have described as a free area, substantially free of Serb control. Again, I make it clear that does not mean there were not attacks and incursions, but nevertheless, substantially, the area was under KLA control. And Colonel Crosland, again in the first trial, drew a map to indicate this area of control between about March and July 1998. And again, broadly, you can see that the area marked in red inside the boundaries of the 3 roads, and this was the area that Colonel Crosland indicated, and you can see in their written KLA, was what he described as basically a KLA area. And the Serbs would stay on the outside and attempt to dominate and influence areas by shelling into that area. He said, quote, "The Serbs took up a position that they could, if you like, contain the fighters within this area by dominating the roads. So Serbian security forces would go off the road a short way, make a raid, rearrange a few houses rather badly, as he put it, and then withdraw back out because they did not feel safe in that area." And Your Honours, that's the 65-04022. It's a transcript reference at page 3029. Indeed, Your Honours can see that Colonel Crosland's map shows in blue pockets of Serb forces along the road area, including near the southern part of Lake Radonic and inside that area, and in and around the high ground to the south of that area. And whilst there were incursions into the area, and indeed later full-scale assaults by Serb forces, the prosecution says broadly this was the zone of influence and control established by the KLA with the Serbs on the outside. Your Honours, in addition, you will hear evidence from Nebojša Avramovic, who was a police officer working as a crime technician in the Đakovica SUP, part of the Ministry of Interior Forces, the Serbian police. He'd been in that position since 1996, and he produces a map as an annex to his statement of roads that were regarded as unsafe by Serb police between April and September 1998. Your Honours should have that, I think, on the screen now. And Your Honours will see 3 markings, 3 coloured markings, A, B and C. C represents the road from Đakovica to Prizren at the bottom of the map, Đakovica being at the bottom. I hope Your Honours are now becoming familiar with what is really a triangle of roads running between Đakovica, Peja and Klina, and at the bottom is Đakovica. The road running from Đakovica to Prizren marked C, he said was a road that was free to travel upon. If it's easier for your honours, it's at page 5 of the map bundle. It may be a little bit clearer actually there, but anyway. The area marked A, the portion of the Jakovica to Klina road which is marked A, he said was safe for Serb police to travel upon.
May I interrupt?
Your Honour, forgive me.
Where is A? Is it on the left corner of the triangle?
It's on the the left hand, the right hand road. Forgive me, running between Jakovica and Klina. It's a little unclear, but it's marked in orange or red. Does Your Honour have it?
I'm grateful to you.
Grateful
Thank you
to
so
Your
much.
Honour. Thank you. It's that's the section of the road running from Jakovica to Klina.
It's the safe area.
That's the safe area, and if Your Honour remembers the map I've just shown you, where there were Serb forces noted by Colonel Crosland in that southern part of this area, that may have some correlation between those two things. But north of that, in the area marked B, the witness describes that being as an area which he says was completely blocked by the KLA from April to September 1998. That was his statement. And Your Honour, we say it is significant that in that area marked B, 2 of the victims in the indictment were abducted. They were witness 6 and Nenad Remishtar, a Serb traffic police officer. Yes, I should indicate, Your Honours, that this map isn't presently on the 65-ter list because it was omitted by accident from Mr. Avramovich's statement. And I will move in due course to admit it formally, but I mentioned that now. So in case my learned friends are trying to find it, it has been disclosed.
Very well, but nor was it part of the 65-ter statement with regard to this witness.
It is. We'll deal with that later. Your Honours, the prosecution, moving on, says it can be seen by looking at Colonel Crosland's maps, assessing his evidence, and looking at other maps and evidence produced by KLA commanders and Serb commanders, that there is a general consensus about the broad areas of control established by KLA forces between April and September 1998, and broad agreement as to where the confrontation lines ran. Essentially, there was a free area in which the KLA had greater freedom to operate away from the confrontation lines. Your Honours, turning now to organisational development of the KLA. Your Honours, Colonel Crosland described the KLA in the early part of 1998 as a fledgling organisation. Your Honours, the evidence will show that during the period between March 1998 and September 1998, the KLA was developing into a more organised force, from village-based commands to more regional commands and a more military-style hierarchical leadership. KLA witnesses, including Rustam Tetay, Jakub Krasniki, show that between March and April 1998, many villages in the Dukajin area began to organise themselves in support of the KLA into defence units, often electing a village commander, appointing guards, and setting up checkpoints at village entrances. The KLA also had a general staff, but at least until June 1998, the General Staff had no main building. All 3 accused were commanders within the KLA: Ramush Haradinaj, based in Glojan, Lahi Brahimaj, based in Jablanica, and Idris Balai, who had moved from Jablanica to Glojan and had been appointed the commander of a special unit known as the Black Eagles by Ramush Haradinaj. Just as the KLA, Your Honours, began to consolidate its control over the Dukajin area, so too Ramush Haradinaj consolidated his control over the KLA. Your Honours, it's significant, the prosecution says, that Ramush Haradinaj, together with his maternal uncle, Lahi Brahimaj, had been at the forefront of the development of the KLA in the Dukajin area since the earliest days of the KLA as a movement in 1994. In the Dukajin area, the subject of the indictment, the prosecution says the organisation of the KLA was greatly assisted by the two main headquarters being within the same extended family. Glojan, controlled by Ramush Haradinaj, and Jablanica by Lahi Brahimaj, his maternal uncle. Within the Kosovar Albanian clan-based culture, the prosecution says these familial ties have great significance. Indeed, witnesses describe being married not just to an individual, but to an entire village. The prosecution says it's quite clear that these familial ties lay at the heart of the initial organisation of the Dukajin zone and its headquarters. In a compilation of interviews with Ramush Haradinaj, entitled A Narrative About War and Freedom,
Sorry,
published in
I think Mr. Rogers is aware, because I indicated to him in advance that I would at this stage rise, because he is about to seek to present, we say again misleadingly, to the trial chamber a document which he suggests is a series of interviews, but is in fact a book published by a journalist called Bard Hamzai. There is no evidence, and the prosecution has none, from the author of this book as to the provenance of the contents. There is no evidence as to the source of the descriptions or statements he attributes to Ramush Haradinaj. There is nothing to suggest that the book was authorised or ever adopted by Ramush Haradinaj or written with his authority. And for that reason, the previous trial chamber rightly regarded it as worthless evidence and excluded it on the basis that it was impossible to understand what ought to be clear as to its provenance, or to be in a position to distinguish between truth, falsity, hyperbole or fact, propaganda or accurate reporting, and that there was nothing to corroborate it. So that before Mr. Rogers, again I say misleadingly, launches into the suggestion that this is a record of interview, it's right that Your Honours should know that it is nothing of the sort. It is again forensic rubbish, and it's material about which there is an outstanding application of exclusion, in which the defence rely on precisely the same arguments that persuaded the previous trial chamber to throw it where it belongs, namely in the bin.
Mr.
No, Your Honours wish to say.
I just want you to respond to that objection.
Yes, let me. You would like me to respond?
If you wish to.
Yes, Your Honours. Of course, this is an opening. In due course, no doubt there'll be litigation about whether or not the document should be admitted. It's a slightly puzzling position on the part of the defence, because my understanding is that in the original trial there was no dispute as to the authenticity or admissibility of the book initially, until my learned friends took objection to it at some later point in the course of
Simply wrong, I'm afraid.
I don't think so. But in any event, Your Honours, we can litigate this in due course when it comes to it.
Let me just make a general comment. I find the opening to verge on testifying and introducing exhibits which are not marked as exhibits yet, but which are documents that make an impression on the mind of the chamber. And to the extent that at this point there is now a dispute about the authenticity and the provenance and the relevance of the book that you are about to refer to, the chamber feels constrained to to apply rules of admissibility before it allows you to continue talking about that. You've got to authenticate it. You've got to bring in a witness to say he's the author of the book, and all the requirements for admissibility. Because the chamber cannot accept that we hear what you are going to say only to throw the book out later. The book might be out, but the mind, it's still in the mind. And the purpose for admissibility is to make sure that the mind of the chamber is not colored by what might turn out to be inadmissible.
Your Honours, my understanding is that in this tribunal, often the